Jump off that exhausting hamster wheel and into balanced living with Dr. Marissa. Her mission, to be a beneficial presence on the planet. Her purpose, to be your personal advocate to live, love, laugh, learn. Her life motto, don't die wondering. Take back your life with Dr. Marissa Fay on ubnradio.com.
And welcome. My name is Dr. Marissa, the new Asian Dr. Ruth, and you're listening to my weekly talk radio show called Take My Advice. I'm not using it. Get Balanced with Dr. Marissa every Tuesday at naturally high noon here at Universal Broadcasting Network, ubnradio.com. And now, yay, newly syndicated on Thursdays with NBC News Radio, KCAA, AM 1050 Loma Linda. And there's all kinds of information on how you can get that show if you missed this one, or you can do 2 doses of Dr. Marissa. And because this is a show about hope and happiness and how you can be happy 88% of the time, it encourages you to put on your life jacket with a silver lining. And we look at various topics to help you be happy. So there's no CNN, no constantly negative news here, and no gossip, no scandal, and no K-words. Kardashians. And this is the last Tuesday of the month. So guess what we're talking about? Here's the hint. Yes, it is. It is the newest series I have called Sexual Healing with Dr. Marissa, because one of the areas that can make you very happy or very unhappy is sex. And if you want a great relationship, sex is dessert. And if you've missed any of my sizzling hot sex shows about booty calls with Dr. Pat Allen, or G-spots with Dr. Robin Milhausen, and condoms with our great researcher Rick last month, then go to YouTube and iTunes for free downloads and give me a finger while you're at it. I mean a thumbs up and a great review. Today I have brought my co-presenter from the California Women's Conference and past guest to be my co-host today, as Dr. Robin is speaking at a conference today to continue what we started on stage, breaking the sex ceiling. That was our topic at the California Women's Conference last month, I believe it was. Yes, it was, right? It's like sped by. Davy Ward is an internationally recognized Tantra and female sexuality expert and one of 2 people in North America qualified to teach the secret Tibetan 5-element sexual tantras, which stem from a 2,600-year-old lineage of Tibetan Tantric Buddhism. She has her own talk radio show called Better Love and Sex with Davy Ward. And after I had my exploratory call with her and found out that she was introduced as the Oprah of sex, and I am introduced as the Asian Oprah because of all of my past Oprah guests and winning the Asian Entrepreneur of the Year award last year, I knew it was a match made in Oprah-dom.
For heaven.
I knew we were destined. So please, without further ado, welcome Ms. Davy Ward. Hey, darling.
Hey there.
It's so good to connect with you. I'm glad we are doing this because we can't seem to find time to connect unless we're doing a show together. So at least we have a show, right?
Yeah, we can get all caught up in each other's gossip and scandal during the radio show.
That's we live and love out loud, right?
Absolutely.
If we can't use the show for any other purpose, it's to catch up. And and so today I wanted to talk about 2 things in particular. One is about shame in sex, and we touched upon it the last time you played with me on the air. And then the other one is Pleasure Education 201. We're moving from 101, the introduction, and we're going to 201 because I want us to take some time and discover and explore and have you educate us about the 11 different kinds of orgasms that women can have. All right? So
that is some good stuff.
Yes, it is. Are you ready?
Yes.
Here we go. So First of all, I have to, I love this book. This is your book, and I've been reading through this book, and I'm going to start big. This is Shake Your Soul Song, A Woman's Guide to Self-Empowerment Through the Art of Self-Pleasure. And in this book that I've been reading along, and I totally am literally on the same page as you, and I love the way that you talk openly about what most women are experiencing when it comes to sex. Mm-hmm. So here I'm going to read from page 65 because it's like a great way to just launch into the whole, the shame / the embarrassment / how we don't talk about this, and we actually don't heal from it because we don't think we deserve it. So here we go. Please keep in mind that the average time of sexual penetration, penis and vagina, is a mere 2 to 7 minutes. And thus many of us have simply never had the time to discover what and where our sexual 10 spots are. And we'll talk about 10 spots too. We simply have no frame of reference for any kind of sexual pleasure experience other than the one we're accustomed to having on a regular basis. In short, we don't know what we don't know. So the last time you said it takes 20 minutes for women to actually feel like they are ready, right?
Not necessarily. No,
Okay.
This is the key.
Okay.
So because women have such a complex network of erectile tissue internally, right? Okay. So it's like I've said, we have innies and men have outies. We have as much erectile tissue internally as a man has externally, but it takes us anywhere from 20 to 45 minutes to become fully erect. So that's fully erect. That's like full hard on, right? So absolutely, we can experience degrees of pleasure up until that point. Mm-hmm. But I'm going to say, so if we think of our pleasure on the scale from 1 to 10. So 10 is like when we're fully engorged, fully erect. It's just like, it is mind-blowing. It is literally scientifically proven to be mind-altering when we experience that much pleasure. Because most women have never had the experience of allowing their bodies to become fully erect, either because, they didn't know how to do it or their partners didn't know how to do it, whatever the case is. Most women, the most pleasure that they've experienced, I would say, is about a 2 or a 3 on a scale from 1 to 10.
Okay.
Yes,
so
exactly.
10 spot is like out of this world, mind blowing, and not just on sex, any kind of pleasure. 10 is the ultimate, and 1 is not very much.
Absolutely. 10 is like penultimate. It's like, wow, to go beyond this would literally, my brain would melt and fall out of my ears. It's the best it can be in that moment.
Okay. And I think this is a moment that I want my listeners to actually practice this, because it's a great scale that you introduced me to at any moment check in with yourself and say, where am I on a scale of 1 to 10? So you're very conscious. It's a wonderful way to be mindful. So on a scale of 1 to 10, Davy, right now, where are you?
I am at about a 7,
okay.
Actually, at a scale from 1 to 10. I'm feeling very comfortable. I've got lots of pillows behind my back. I'm sitting really comfortably. I'm enjoying myself in this interview. I think the only thing that would make it a 10 would be to be like having sex right now, but that wouldn't be appropriate on your radio show, so.
Well, only because we have cameras now. So maybe we'll get to that. That's like pleasure 901. That's like a PhD in pleasure in our pleasure education.
That's the video instruction.
Exactly. My poor sound engineer. So I am at, I would say I'm at a 8. And I love being in my studio. I made it through traffic, got here. My daughters are in the green room, not listening because this is the sex show. And they're here because they're on summer break and they get to come with their mom. And we're going to go to Lemonade after. And I'm really, really grateful and feeling really good. So I would say I'm going to put it a 9. So that's where I am.
Here's the thing. Is there anything that would make it a 10 for you right now?
Yeah, I forgot to pack a snack. So I'm a little bit hungry, and a banana and a tea egg would have been a 10. That's what would have made me a 10.
Perfect. So next time you know how to take care of yourself to make it a 10.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. So now we go back to the sex. So if it takes the man 2 to 7 and it takes the woman 20 to 45, therein lies one of the ways, if I look at this as an opportunity, to take care of ourselves better in the bedroom. So if you're having sex with a guy or a woman and you know, and I'm going to go back to the book. So I myself, were a classic, and this is obviously an R-rated, X-rated show today. So I'm actually going to use the F word. So because you have an expression here called you through it.
Yes.
Okay. So what does that mean?
That means we tend to ignore our pain, or shall we say we tend to ignore what would enhance our pleasure for the purpose of just getting through it, just getting through the experience. Okay. So I use it in the context of sexually. So how many of us women have had a sexual encounter where it was a little bit dry and it was chafing and we would have really enjoyed some lube, but we didn't ask for it? Or we're in a position that's not uncomfortable, but it's probably going to be over soon and we don't want to say anything to interrupt the experience. So we basically don't advocate for our own comfort or our own pleasure.
Yeah.
Or, classic example is man or partner. It doesn't have to be a man, partner giving us oral pleasuring or, genital stimulation, whether it's with their fingers or their tongue. And they're kind of on the right spot, but they're not quite on the right spot. And instead of actually communicating to them about, hey, a little bit softer, a little bit, harder, a little bit to the right, we just through. We just lay back and moan and pretend that it's perfect, even though, one small tiny adjustment would make it exquisite. But we don't communicate that, or we attempt to communicate it with body language, which in my opinion is like trying to play charades while you're having sex. It's just ineffective and it doesn't work for either partner. It's like a shot in the dark. Maybe they'll understand what my hips and moving means, but maybe they won't, right? So very rarely are we inclined, or do we feel, I want to say, I'm going to use the word permission. Very rarely do we feel, as women particularly, that we have permission to advocate for our own pleasure. So this shows up specifically in the bedroom, but it also just shows up in our everyday life. Mm-hmm. How often do we really ask for what we want when we want it?
Right. Which is exactly why I do this series. I mean, what you just said in the last 3 minutes, I see hands going up all over Radio Land right now, mine included, because it is true. Most of us don't ask for what we desire or want, or we don't even know what feels good or what we desire or we want. Because I absolutely fall into that category of, oh, well, I'll take care of myself later. For some stupid reason, I think it's more important for him to feel good or reach his climax. And, it's like I take too long. I mean, that's this horrible BS belief system, bullshitaki, that whenever I am in that kind of situation where I'm having sex or making love, and even when I'm having sex, I'm still reticent to say, oh, wow, can you do that a little longer? Or, oh, that feels so good. Or, why can't we? And that's why we're talking about this. And thank you to all of the people who have messaged and sent me emails saying, I'm so glad you're talking about this, because we still don't want to put this moose on the table. Like, oh, we shouldn't talk about this. But we have to talk about this. We have to be able to. And I actually did one of your exercises in your book where I asked my partner, instead of doing the regular, talking a little, having some kissing, and then going at it, I said, can we try this conscious awareness exercise? And so I wanted to share it with my listeners, where you touch you correct me on this, but you go from the top to the bottom and you just touch, and you really feel what it's like to be touched and what it feels like to touch from head to toe, and then you turn them over and then go from heel back up to the head. Is that right? Or did I get it the other way around?
You go up the back and down the front.
Up the back and down the front. And just that much. I know I was much more in my body, and I felt like I could say, oh, that really feels good. Do that for a little longer. And that gave me permission. And what was interesting was I was embarrassed to ask for it because I thought, I don't even know if he's going to be into it or want to do it. And he's like happy because he wants to know what makes me feel good. But I'm the one blocking. I'm the one saying, it takes too long, or I take too long. Or
yes, and this is the wonderful thing. So a lot of the way that we're socialized, and you're totally correct in this, a lot of the way that we as women are socialized in our sexuality is to please the man. We need to keep him happy. And, and I'm going to say mainstream porn culture perpetuates this myth because it's all about the male ejaculatory orgasm. It's all about right? Very, very little about the whole process of female sexual arousal. And yet, this is the thing that I love in talking with men. I love this about you men out there. I just love it. I love it. I love it. Men feel like king of the world when their women get off really well. It's like men are wired to pleasure women. And the thing is, they really want to know. They want to know how to rock our world and make our brains melt and like be the best sex ever for us. They really want to know that, right? So the more information we can give them in a very positive, life-enriching, supportive way, the better off they are. Like it's a win-win situation for both people. I get to communicate, yes, I really like that. That's a fabulous thing. Keep doing that, please. And they get to feel like the diggity dank man of the world because they're doing that same thing. And I want to say in partnership, regardless of your sexual orientation, I'm going to bet that your partner, if your partner is there in bed with you, they want to give you a 10. Because I know if I'm there in bed with you, I'm all about, I want you to have the best experience you've ever had, right? And the more information you can give me about what's working, the better. The better I can do my job.
Now,
right?
I have to be honest with you. I honestly must have, I don't know, my first probably dozen experiences, I would say out of that dozen, 8 did not really want to give me a 10. So I come from a very unhappy, unfulfilling, to say the least, and extremely what's the word? Debilitating. So I have even more work to do because I automatically assume that they don't want to do that. That's not their goal. And so the good news is I am meeting men who assure me that is what, they want to be a lover, a good lover to me. And that is like a weird concept. And I have to say, for those of you who have heard my past show on how, I'm going to bring you along with me on how I couldn't, I never could see myself as someone that could have sex without intimate relationship. I'm starting to rethink that. Not that I'm going out and, anything goes. But I know myself enough, and I'm honoring myself, knowing that I've had those 8 out of 12 or 10 out of 12 really bad, relationships, committed relationships, that it is something that, I'm being more open to, what would a lover, how that would help me heal in this area. And so I just wanted to share that.
And thank you for sharing that. And you bring up a good point because you're right. I mean, I think we've all had experiences being in relationships with partners that weren't really invested in our pleasure, and perhaps we weren't invested in their pleasure. So I do want to say that, for me, that's a really good signpost as to whether or not a relationship is healthy.
Right.
Because
Good.
sexuality is an area where we tend to overlook. We overlook it to make everything else work. If the marriage is okay, or we got bills to pay, or whatever. But if we're unfulfilled in our relationship sexually, we're going to be unfulfilled in every other area of our life. I think most people, unless you're categorically an asexual person. But if our sexuality, for most people who are, have a healthy relationship or moderately healthy relationship to their sexuality, lovemaking is an integral aspect to having an intimate relationship. Yes. Otherwise, you're friends without benefits, right?
Right.
So it's kind of like the glue that holds an intimate relationship together, the sexual intimacy.
Yes.
And if you're not on the same page with it, and you're not willing to get on the same page with it, it's going to be a tremendous source of suffering for one or both of you. Okay.
Yes.
So my key question isn't that I expect, my partners to show up like fully trained, like these amazing tantric, whatever. My invitation is that they show, or my desire is that they show up willing to learn, and I'm willing to learn, right? Because everybody is different. And I like to say that sexual pleasure is the game that we play as adults.
Yeah.
When we grow up, when we were kids, we used to make mud pies and wooden forts, and now we're adults, and the game that we like to play is sexual pleasure and sexual intimacy. So, how much fun can we have while playing this incredible game together? And there's so much potential for growth and healing and love and expansion, and it takes two. It literally is a dance.
Yeah.
And so if you're with a dance partner who really does not want to dance with you, then you're not going to have very much fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is a good criteria. It's if you don't, I had someone actually email me and share that it's that as a result of talking about this, she's very aware now of how bad the relationship is, and that she wants to have a fulfilling sex life. And it is true that I think it's another BS belief system that it's only really good, in that dating phase or in the honeymoon phase, and then it just sort of falls off. Like you said, it's glue. It's the glue. And if we can't get that glue going, and here's I think, my guess is a gender difference. So most women like to improve a relationship through talking and communicating, and I feel, and would you honor, and how are you feeling, and what are you thinking? I think most men, if we communicated with the body the way that we want them to communicate with the speaking, I think that meeting in the middle would also help. That there's that touch factor. And I mentioned on, I think it was the last show, that when we're nagging and we're complaining and they can't do anything right, that's not fulfilling for foreplay.
Well, no, it's not well, I mean, I love the idea of creating a win-win situation. I spent 4 days down in Northern California. I guess it's up for you, but down for me, with the people at the Welcome Consensus, and they created the technique called deliberate orgasm, and which most people are practicing as orgasmic meditation. But they had a lot of wonderful key points, and I just want to give them credit whenever I spout out.
Yeah, because I haven't been able to catch up with you on that. I know you were there that weekend. I talked to you briefly. So it was great. Did you actually practice orgasms, or
no,
did you? Okay.
It was wonderful. It was a retreat. It was called Common Sensuality, right? And it was a retreat on pleasure and sensuality and female orgasm. But it was so little about, or it was interesting because so little orgasm was actually practiced in the traditional sense of the way we think of orgasm, which is physical genital touching, right? We did have an incredible demonstration, and we did have time to pleasure ourselves and that sort of thing. But there was an interactive connection. There was no nudity, no genital touching between the participants or anything like that. So it was totally my learning style. I don't like having random people touching me, that especially my genitals that I don't know. But the point that I wanted to make about that is they had so many incredible concepts that they shared about how we're socialized regarding our sexuality, and how much of our cultural programming that, again, we don't know what we don't know, that limits our experience to experience pleasure in all its myriad forms.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so they spoke specifically about this relationship between men and women, and exactly what you described. When he can't do anything good enough, when we were constantly complaining,
Right.
it's not a win-win situation.
Right.
So it's like looking at how can we create a win for both of us?
Mm-hmm.
How can we both win in this situation? And
Mm-hmm.
one of the concepts that they threw out is for men and women to have friendships which include sexuality. So very often we're lovers, very often we're partners, very often we're husband and wives, but how often are we friends that are exploring our sexual connection? And I think that's a really great orientation to relationship. I'm enjoying practicing that right now with a new guy in my life, is establishing a friendship, so that we can be totally authentic and totally real and totally just 100% with each other, and we get to include our sexuality in our friendship.
I think that's where I'm headed too. And it's a great feeling. It's a very different feeling. So there's not all that, there's not all that expectation. There's not all that, well, what does this mean? All it means is that I enjoy your company, and I'm healing. I'm doing some healing work on my sexuality and my sensuality and how I feel about my body and what makes my body feel good.
And we're playing together. And that's really the approach. We're playing together. We get to play, and it's fun, because sex can be so heavy, and and the topic of sex, because there's so much wounding, and I appreciate that. And I think it's important to acknowledge that we all have woundings and we all have pains in regards to our sexuality. And yet if we can bring that sense of innocence and that sense of joy and that sense of exploration and just this pure heartfelt desire to give and receive pleasure.
Right.
Like, it's just so beautiful. It has the potential for such beauty and such growth and such transformation for our hearts.
And I hope you are all getting that. I mean, that's why I do this series, because we've let sex become hostage to the dark side.
Yes.
Right? Porn,
exactly.
Slave trade, the abuse, and yes, obviously I have that on my show so that we can work against it, but we have to balance it with the light side. We have to balance it with the joy of sex. There was a book on that. So just bringing that back, and I'm so grateful for all. Thank you. Continue to email me and message me. It really encourages me, and I'm so glad that people all over the world are healing because of this series. And thank you, Davey, for coming on to talk with us. And I hear the music, actually, that is reminding me to thank the sponsor of today's show, and that is Miss Davey Ward. Would you like to experience more pleasure and better orgasms? Do you crave a more intimate, sensual, and perhaps even sacred sexual connection? Find out how you can start having the pleasure, intimacy, and satisfaction you crave. Get your pens, get your pencils. I'm about to give you her website, but it's pretty easy. You can see it on the screen here. You can always contact me as well. DEVI Ward, Davey Ward. It sounds like DA, but it's actually DE. DEVI Ward, Tantra.com. DaveyWardTantra.com. Register for your free female orgasm guide and uncover the top 3 blocks preventing women and their partners from having the sex life they desire. And mention Dr. Marissa, and you'll get a free, I don't know what, but I want to see.
We'll give you free something.
Something. You're going to get a free something. So if you're not happy in the bedroom, go to DaveyWardTantra.com, because you're worth it. Thank you, Davey, for sponsoring today's series episode, Sexual Healing with Dr. Marissa.
So welcome.
All right, back to the 11 kinds of orgasms that women can have, because I think self-pleasure is another one of those things that we don't talk about, because masturbation is wrong, it's bad, it will make you go blind, it's dirty, it's not something you should do or talk about. And if you're going to do it, certainly don't talk about it. And I think that shame is bull belief system, BS. I think that how the heck are we supposed to know what feels good if we can't experiment with ourselves? So Yes, I just said that. So the teaser for today's show was going through the 11 kinds of orgasms, which I didn't know that we could have. And certainly many women, and the stats are up to 80% women don't even know, haven't experienced a vaginal orgasm and or fake. So here we go. The 11 are, and I'm just going to read them off. This is also in Davy's fabulous book here. Clitoral orgasms are usually short and intense. They're often what we think of as a climax, and they can be easily compared to the male ejaculatory orgasm. And I would guess, Davy, correct me if I'm wrong, this is probably the one that most women, if they are orgasmic, have this kind of orgasm.
Yeah, generally when we say orgasm, we're thinking of a clitoral orgasm, and clitoral orgasm, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, literally, yeah. I mean, most people don't know that 90% of the clitoris is internal, right?
No,
so
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's not just this tiny little nub. That literally is the tip of the iceberg. And so clitoral orgasms are women's, it has 8,000 nerve endings. It's the gateway for most women to pleasure and to ecstasy. And yet, even our experience of clitoral orgasm is minuscule or minimal compared to its potential. I was able to witness a 1 hour long clitoral orgasm. So literally for an hour, this woman was having waves and peaks and valleys of clitoral pleasure.
Wow. In one of your sessions?
And at the female orgasm retreat that I went to with the Welcome Consensus, they did a demonstration of a 1 hour orgasm. And they were only demonstrating clitoral orgasms because they don't do a lot of, talk about the internal vaginal orgasm. So what most of us, again, that's why I'm saying, compared to our potential, we're experiencing a fraction. I would say, again, like a 2 or 3 on a scale from 1 to 10, even if we're having great sex. I mean, when I started practicing Tantra, I thought my sex was fine. I didn't know where my G-spot was. Intercourse was painful, but I thought it was fine, right? I was good. I was good to go.
Right.
I was experiencing, I would say, like a 1.5 to a 2, right? And I had maybe had a few other experiences that were maybe a 3. But compared to what I'm experiencing now, and that's just, again, I'm just, our potential is literally infinite. So we'll continue to grow. So for most people, our default sexual cultural conditioning, that's what it is. It's default. We receive no pleasure education in this culture. None.
Right.
Did anybody ever teach you how to kiss? No. Did anyone ever teach you how to communicate to your partner in bed? No. Nobody's doing that, right?
Right.
So all of our sexual education is default. And we learn it through peers. We learn it through porn. We learn it through the media. And that's all, again, it's all of our sources of learning are only experiencing a fraction of their sexual potential. So when we start expanding our current paradigm, shall we say, and we start tapping into higher and higher realms of sensual and sexual pleasure, we begin to have a much broader view and a much wider, bigger, vaster, expansive approach to sexuality and to pleasure and to even orgasm and what that is.
My goal by the end of the year is to have all 11 of these.
And they're fabulous. And the thing to keep in mind, this is the thing to keep in mind, especially for women. So because we're accustomed to clitoral orgasm and we know what that feels like, and it looks sort of like a male ejaculatory orgasm, it's a release of tension. Basically, it's a genital sneeze, and then we feel nice and relaxed afterwards. That's our orientation orgasm. But ladies, your vaginal orgasms are a completely different ballgame.
Okay, so let's go to those. So you've got G-spot is number 2, U-spot is number 3, A-spot is number 4, P-spot is number 5. And those are all vaginal orgasms, right? They're inside the
Well,
vagina?
the U spot, actually, no, the U spot
Okay.
refers to the urethral sponge.
Okay.
So the urethral sponge, the periurethral sponge is what our G spot is. It's spongy tissue that surrounds the urethra. Now, the G spot is anywhere when it's unengorged, it's about an inch and a half inside the vagina. When it's engorged, it's about 2 inches deep,
Wow.
right? But the thing is it extends all the way from the back of the G spot all the way to the vaginal opening. And then on the outside of the vaginal, like right above the introitus, around your urethra, right? It's your U spot, your urethral spot. There's that spongy erectile tissue, and it's friction sensitive. And so many women, and this is something that I just honestly started experiencing in the last year and a half, can experience orgasm through having that spongy erectile tissue outside surrounding the urethra stimulated.
Huh. Yeah. Now, do you need a flat? I'm trying to picture this. How do you figure out where's what?
Well, it's a wonderful thing to take a mirror and look at your genitals, especially if you've never done that. And you know what's really fun and exciting to do is like, okay, so I like to look at my whole. You can look at your whole your clitoris and your inner labia and your outer labia and your urethra, your U spot, and you can see your vaginal opening, your introitus, and you can see a little bit of the G spot sticking out, the front end of the G spot, and you can do that when you're not aroused and not engorged. But then I invite you to like pleasure yourself or have your partner pleasure you for like 15-20 minutes and then look. Oh my God, it's totally different. It's so amazing. It's so cool because
Okay.
it gets all puffy and engorged and you
Okay.
can see
So
everything stands out.
If you've just tuned in, I have to tell you what you're listening to. All right. So, and then give you a little, I'm not defensive here, but I absolutely want to promote the context for this. So you're listening to Take My Advice, I'm Not Using It, Get Balanced with Dr. Marissa. And I have a dear, fabulous friend on the air with me who is my sexpert, my personal sexpert. And her name is Davy Ward, and she's a tantric female sensuality expert and sexuality expert. And what she is doing right now is breaking all kinds of past BS belief systems around what is okay to talk about and what is okay to look at. And I know my shame buttons are getting pushed left, right, and center because, one, I have never thought that I am attractive down there. And I know I am not alone. I know that many, many, many women have that same shaming belief system. And I want us all to take a deep breath right now, in through the nose, and then releasing all of that toxic shame and all of that BS and all of any messages that are saying that there's something wrong with you down there, or that it is the original sin, or it is something that is so deeply you're going to get struck with lightning. It's not true. It is part of our body that is so beautiful, and it is so important and wonderful, and the gateway to pleasure, which is what we're supposed to experience in this lifetime. We are not supposed to be ashamed of a major part of our lives and our bodies and our womanhood. So please, if you're ready to turn this off, or if you're so embarrassed that you can't listen, I want you to just stay with me, stay with us, and just realize that you are loved, loving, and lovable, especially there. Because if we can't get to that point, if we cannot break through that block, then our relationships suffer. Our relationships with ourselves suffer. So when she's talking about putting a mirror when you are engorged, it is a healthy acting on your own behalf activity. It is not something shameful. And I'm saying this, it sounds like I'm saying it to my listening audience, but honestly, I am saying it to me because there is just so much there that shame, of even discovering masturbation or doing it and getting over the fact that there's nothing wrong and it's not dirty.
And one of the things that I really like to remind people is that sexual shame is learned behavior. We're not born with it. Children have no sexual shame. until they're taught that it's wrong and bad. You did not, if you feel shame about your genitals, that's because somebody else told you that,
Yep.
not because it's an inherent part of your psyche. It's not. It's because at some point in your life you were shamed. And then, we have all the media shaming of female genitalia. They're stinky, they smell, you need feminine wash, you need to douche, periods are dirty. And then again, we have, again, pornography, which sets up these unrealistic standards for female genitalia. So it's the same kind of thing. Like Cosmo gives women a negative self-body image, and porn and other forms of media give women negative, genital body image. So genital shame, again, it's learned behavior. I had it. It's not like I somehow escaped. The reason that I love sharing the information I share is because I was completely disconnected from my sexuality. I was so wounded. I'm a survivor of sexual abuse. I mean, I had so much trauma and so much wounding and so much ignorance to overcome. Yeah. And that's why I feel so passionately about sharing this message, because it can be overcome and because it is so worth it. Yeah. The other side, getting through, the dark tunnel of the night to the other side, is so incredibly worth it. It is an entirely different universe of freedom, self-love, self-acceptance, self-empowerment, and joy.
Yes.
So I just encourage you, baby steps. I've been there. It was traumatizing for me to look at my genitals the first few times. Yeah. It was scary. I've learned to love them, and as I've learned to love them, my partners love them too.
Yeah, I definitely, I have a new respect for any man who says, I just love going there, because that to me, that communicates that they really want to honor that and to bring pleasure. Because if you can't look at it, and if you can't touch it, and if you don't understand it, and if you don't know where any of these spots are, how the heck are you supposed to feel the pleasure that comes with sex?
Well,
right?
Exactly. And that's the key thing. So a lot of us were ignorant of our genital anatomy, and, men and women. So yeah. And then, so there's cervical orgasms as well. So the cervix is a highly sensitized, pleasure receptive source of female orgasm. And a lot of these different orgasms have to do with the way the erectile tissue is dispersed internally and the way the pelvis is innervated, meaning the way the nerves come down the spinal column and then branch out throughout the entire pelvis. And depending on, every woman's pelvic anatomy is unique to her, literally.
Right.
So the reason, going through the rest of the orgasms, there's anal orgasms, there's orgasms from having our nipples stimulated, there's full body orgasms, there's ejaculatory orgasms, there's all these different
blended orgasm.
Blended
for those
orgasms.
that are counting.
Blended orgasms, and then there's also hands-free orgasm, which comes from squeezing and releasing your pelvic floor muscles and working with your breath, training your breath. Also, there's perennial orgasms from the perennial sponge, which is also stimulated during anal pleasure, but is a distinct and separate form of orgasm than just an anal orgasm, having the perennial sponge stimulated, which is also stimulated through the vagina. I'm talking about those because those are one of my recent new kinds of orgasm that's awakened up,
because it's not
for me personally.
It's not. It's not on the page.
I know.
We're gonna have to. It's 12 now.
That's why I say the over 11, because since then, it was about 2 years ago, and since then there's more.
Right.
That's why I say it's infinite.
Right.
It's ever evolving. So some women, this is the key, because all of our pelvises are innervated uniquely. Some women are going to find it easier to orgasm through the anus than they will through, say, the clitoris. Right. So we're all unique, and I'm just saying easier. So, if you're a woman who really enjoys anal sex and you don't enjoy, clitoral stimulation all that much, it doesn't mean you're broken. It just means that perhaps you have more nerve endings going to your anus than your clitoris. But the thing is that nerve endings are going everywhere. And part of our yoga or our training or our self-pleasure practice is to bring touch and breath and awareness, consciousness to all of our pleasure receptors, to all of our pleasure zones, to awaken them.
Right.
Because all women have the capacity to be fully multi-orgasmic. You are hardwired for it. It is part of your hardwire.
Yes.
Just like you eat and poop. Right? It's
not really always in that order.
Analogy. You eat, you poop. It's just hardwired. It's just what happens, right?
Right.
When we experience pleasure for long enough periods of time in certain areas, we will simply orgasm. Orgasm is the body's natural response to pleasure.
And
it's
I
just
heard
a
the
fact.
saddest thing when I was explaining, someone had asked, what my show was about and the special series, and I told her about the sexual healing, and she said, I'm too old for that. And my heart just broke. And then other ones were, I'm too busy for that. And I'm guilty of that one. So it's like, well, no, you're not. You it's one of those things. It's just like exercise. You will feel better after, and it has so many health benefits. I did a show on that already. You'll have to go back into my archives. We're not going to have time to go through them again, but there's just no bad in this. Now, if you talk to the church, maybe you'll hear something different. Not church bashing, but a lot of the shame comes from that aspect. So I'm just absolutely determined to make pleasure a G-rated and a G-spot rated topic, because it has so much to do with health and happiness and hope and life. So go ahead.
Yeah, and one of the things about thinking that we're too old, again, this is culturally conditioned into us that when you reach a certain age, you're not supposed to have any more sex drive, right? We don't necessarily want to think about our grandparents having sex, but I just want to let you know that 2 of my tantric instructors are in their 70s and are amazing. So one of my tantric trainers, Carla Tara, you can look her up, Carla Tara, she's based in New York. She's 77. The woman looks like she's 40. She's stunning. She's gorgeous. Sex is the fountain of youth. Yes. Sexuality, sexual vitality is a fountain of youth.
Yes.
And my Lama Tashi, who I just want to say never had a sexual relationship. His tantric instruction has been, spiritual and verbal, but he's in his 70s and he has a tantric consort and he has sex. I don't know. I'm not all up in his sex life, but I know he has lots of sex, right? So, and he's in his 70s, right?
Yeah.
So the thing is that our sexual pleasure and our sexual energy is a vital resource for our health and longevity. Yeah. When it's used consciously and correctly.
Yes. I just had a thought. This is, what this show is, and this topic, it's Viagra for women.
Yes, and men. Men.
Right?
For
no,
humans.
well, men, yeah. Well, men have their Viagra, right? Which, if you don't do any of the other intimate stuff, the Viagra really isn't doing anything for you. Because if you're doing the Viagra to please the woman, it's not just that's going to please the woman. If you haven't heard anything yet, this whole show is about that. So there's so much more than just having that hard. So
penis and vagina.
Right.
There's so much more.
So much more. So this show and being able to talk about all this stuff is Viagra for women. But there's no side effects. Right?
Only healthy side effects. And the thing about Viagra for men is that semen retention is actually the cure for most causes of erectile dysfunction that aren't caused by circulation or being overweight, that aren't physiologically based.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because I was like, I hope we have time to have you explain what semen retention is. What is that?
So semen retention is the practice of learning how to separate orgasm from ejaculation for men.
Okay.
Because orgasm and ejaculation are 2 separate functions of the autonomic nervous system. And with correct training and using the proper methods, men can very easily begin separating those 2 so that they can have full body, non-ejaculatory multiple orgasms. The reason that men want to retain their semen is because, and this comes from ancient Eastern medicine, as well as some Western scientific study, is that 20% of semen is made up of the same minerals and vital nutrients as cerebrospinal fluid. So if when a man ejaculates, all of his body's resources and reserves go into making more semen. So if you think of semen and sperm, it is literally baby batter. It is the best of the best of the best of the best of the vital essences of men. Your body takes the best of all of its goodness and puts it into that semen. And every time you and drop a load, you're basically you're just wasting it's like distilled man essence. You're wasting hormones, you're wasting vital nutrients that just go nowhere. They go into your sock drawer or wherever they go. So when a man retains his semen, his body is then able to, instead of those vital nutrients being squirted out, they're actually reabsorbed into the spongy tissue in the pelvis and reabsorbed into the bloodstream and actually go to feed the vital organs such as the heart, the liver, the kidneys, and the brain itself.
Another BS system just went down the tubes, literally, or in the sock drawer.
In the sock drawer.
So yeah, so that's really good to know, because usually that is the goal, right? Is to climax. Is usually, let's get them there. Let me get there. And what you're saying is there's much more than just that in the pleasure load.
Yeah, well, there's
in the
much
pleasure
more than
chest.
that. Just in the pleasure chest. Beautiful analogy. Load or chest, right? But yeah, there's way more. There's way more than that, because one puny genital sneeze or orgasm for men is not the goal. When you learn to separate orgasm from ejaculation, I've literally had sex with men that are having multiple non-ejaculatory orgasms, and we just keep having sex, and they've had like 3 or 4 orgasms already.
Right. And guess what? We are totally out of time. I know we could do we probably could do this all day. We'll do a workshop sometime. I think this would be a great idea. Thank you so much. I'm just so grateful that we got to catch up and also get really wonderfully educated. 11 kinds of orgasms that women can have, where we can wipe out our shame, where we can rediscover who we are and the best of who we are and have pleasure at the same time. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Peace and blessings. Me. You get the Dr. Marissa Beneficial Presence on the Planet Award because of your work and taking your past and being a victim of sexual abuse and now turning that all around to help so many people. So daviewardtantra.com. If you have any questions, any help that's needed, please go to her. Thank you so much, Davie. And we will try to catch up soon. And wrapping up today with a few balance bars. Use my mat. There we go. We'll be giving a free demo of balanced Tai Chi Gong this Saturday at the Agape International Spiritual Center. On July 11th, I will be speaking at the AWE Concordia University Small Business Conference as the keynote, and scheduling more callers on my Dr. Marissa, the Kinder, Gentler Dr. Laura shows on NBC. And I just made it onto the CBS Saturday morning Emmy Award-winning show Recipe Rehab with my daughters. So yes, lots of fabulous things happening next Tuesday. My special guests are the Emerging Leaders Academy, a program that is keeping first-time offenders from going back into the system. So tune in at naturally high noon for Take My Advice. I'm not using it. Get balanced with Dr. Marissa Pay, and that's P for positive, EI, and also joining me Thursday night at 7 p.m. on NBC News Radio, KCAA, AM 1050 at Loma Linda. So take my advice. I'm not using it. Get balanced with Dr. Marissa Pay. That's all about balance. Peace in and peace out.
May he turn 21 on the base of Fort Bliss just today.